Please let me in. One early morning in winter, I opened the front door to get the newspaper and couldn't believe my eyes. My 5-year-old grandson was huddling in the yard, shaking uncontrollably in the cold. I quickly brought him inside and warmed him up. Where are your parents? They went to Hawaii with my sister. They said I would be a bother. As soon as my grandson finally stopped shivering, blurted out these shocking words, I felt a surge of anger. Why didn't they take him too? What on earth do they think about your son? Outraged by this cruel treatment, I vowed to make my son and daughter-in-law pay. I'm Susan, 58, still working as a nurse. After losing my husband to illness early on, I raised my only son, David, by myself. I worked hard to ensure he never felt deprived, providing him with a comfortable life. Though I couldn't always be there for him due to my busy schedule, I compensated by giving him everything he wanted. Perhaps as a result, David grew up a bit spoiled and self-centered, which worried me. However, 6 years ago, he got married and became a father to Jake, 5, and Sophie, 4. His wife, Tracy, although a bit flashy, got along well with David. And their 2 children were the apples of my eye. Living just 10 minutes away, I decided to support them without being overbearing. Our relationship was good, maintaining just the right amount of distance. As a working nurse, I had enough savings and income to provide generous gifts and support on special occasions. Sometimes I felt they took advantage of me, but I overlooked it, knowing how expensive raising children can be. However, one thing always bothered me. It was the difference in how they treated Jake and Sophie. Especially Tracy, who always wanted a daughter, seemed to favor Sophie openly. She invested heavily in Sophie's activities, like dance, piano, and French classes. Sophie, you're so talented at everything. Mommy's so proud of you. She praised my granddaughter in front of Jake, without any consideration. Jake, who fell in love with soccer after watching the World Cup, longed to join a soccer class. Hey, Tracy. How about letting Jake join a soccer class? He seems interested. Oh no. He can't do that. It would be a waste of time and money. She said, it's a waste of money. Unable to stand it, I talked to David about it. Why not let Jake join something too? I can help if needed. No, he can't handle it. It's fine. I offered to support Jake's activities, but David turned me down. They said Jake couldn't do anything, but he was a smart kid who spoke early and loved drawing. His drawings were so good that even my young colleagues at work admired them. Look, you should see Jake's drawings. Even my colleagues at work are fans. They're probably not that great. Drawing is useless anyway. They barely glanced at his drawings and laughed them off. Sophie always wore cute clothes, while Jake wore old, ill-fitting ones. Sophie has so many clothes. How about taking Jake shopping for some new ones? I do buy him clothes. But boys' clothes are all the same, and girls are just more fun. Having thought the same while raising David, I didn't press further. Both grandchildren were precious to me. I tried to treat them equally, but because David and Tracy favored Sophie, I paid more attention to Jake. As a result, Jake grew attached to me and often stayed at my house alone. Sophie, do you want to stay at Grandma's house too? Sophie eagerly replied, yes, but Tracy immediately objected. You can't, Sophie. What if something happened to you? Although the siblings got along well, my granddaughter always wanted to stay over, but my son and daughter-in-law never allowed it. One day, while I was visiting their house, David made a remark. Raising kids really costs a lot, huh? Yeah, but you'll manage. Besides, I haven't told you yet, but I've been saving some money for Jake and Sophie. I had been saving money for my grandchildren since they were born, intending to give it to them when needed. I hadn't planned to tell them yet, not wanting them to rely on it, but David's weak comment made me slip. David's eyes lit up immediately. Really? Then just give me Jake's share, just in case. But this is for the grandchildren, and I can't give it now. Come on, we need it now. Just give it to me. Overwhelmed by David's insistence, I reluctantly handed him a debit card that only allowed spending within the account balance. This card can't spend more than the account balance, so it should be fine. Maybe Jake won't have to suffer anymore. Hoping for the best, I decided to wait and see. But I never imagined that this card would put my grandson in even greater danger. At that time, I couldn't have foreseen what would happen. One early winter morning, I went to get the newspaper and was so shocked that I went speechless. Amidst the falling snow, Jake was huddled in the yard, shaking. Jake? What happened? He slowly looked up, his eyes vacant and lips blue. Please let me in. Hearing Jake's faint voice, I knew time was of the essence. I hurried and carried him inside. I immediately turned the heater on high, wrapped Jake in a blanket, and gave him hot chocolate to drink. Gradually, his shivering stopped. And he calmed down. Where are your mom and dad? They went to Hawaii with my sister. I couldn't comprehend it at first. Hawaii? They didn't take you? No, they said I'd be a bother. How could they leave Jake behind in the middle of winter while going so far away? When did they leave? About 3 days ago. I ate all the bread they left, but it ran out, so I came to your house. Oh my. So you've been alone all this time? Poor Jake had been alone in a cold house with little to eat. I immediately prepared breakfast and sat him at the table. He ate hungrily, repeatedly saying how delicious it was. You should have come here right away. Dad and Mom said I shouldn't go to you. But I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm sorry, Grandma. Outraged by their cruelty, I almost lost my mind. Jake, you can stay here with me. Don't worry anymore. I decided then and there to protect him from his parents. I took him to the hospital to make sure he was okay. Although he was a bit weak, he wasn't in serious danger. Relieved, I still couldn't fathom or forgive my son and Tracy's actions. I had wanted to believe in them, but now. It's too cruel to Jake. I vowed to make them feel the same pain they inflicted on my grandson. Determined to get revenge, I took a week's vacation from work. I wanted to stay close to Jake. Besides, I had many investigations to do. When I had a minute to cool down, a troubling thought crossed my mind. How did they afford a trip to Hawaii? Could it be? Dreading the answer, I checked the balance on the debit card account I had given my son. It was down by about $10,000. Convinced that they had used the card for their trip, I was furious. To prevent them from using any more of Jake's savings, I withdrew all the money from the account. The account is empty now. We'll see what happens. Determined to take custody of my grandson, I decided to consult with someone. Honestly, I was worried about living with Jake since his parents were still around, but I was relieved to find out it might work. Then, I received some astonishing news. This news further encouraged me. 2 days after emptying Jake's account, David called me, furious. Hey. The card isn't working. I can't withdraw money from the ATM. What's going on? Oh, I needed the money urgently, so I withdrew it. But don't worry, there's plenty of time to save up again before Jake goes to college. Well, okay. Just make sure to deposit more soon. I was completely exasperated by his audacity. Suppressing the urge to yell, I avoided mentioning the trip to Hawaii and made an excuse. David seemed unable to argue further and hung up. 3 days later, David and Tracy returned home. Noticing Jake's absence, David immediately contacted me. I briefly explained that I was taking care of Jake and arranged to visit their house. On the day of the meeting, while Jake and Sophie were at daycare, I visited their house with someone. In the living room, David and Tracy glared at us, clearly annoyed. Who is that? First of all, I want to know why you went on a trip and left Jake all alone. I glared back, pressing them for answers. They exchanged glances and smirked, showing no remorse. You emptied the Jake's account, so it was your fault that we couldn't go shopping or eat out on the trip. It was such a ruined vacation because of that. They blamed me for ruining their vacation. What are you talking about? That's your own fault. Why didn't you use your own money? We can't do that. Jake is only 5 and he's a handful. Anyway, what's his is ours. I was appalled by their selfishness, especially since they didn't even take Jake on the trip. You know he's only 5, yet you did something so terrible. It's unforgivable. Jake isn't very likable. Sophie is enough for us. They are both your children. Yeah, but I've never wanted Jake. Girls are cuter, and raising boys is pointless. Their shocking attitude prompted the person with me to speak up. I'm Michael, a lawyer. From what I've heard, it's clear that you have no affection for Jake. This is a clear case of neglect. I had consulted Michael beforehand to legally take custody of Jake and had him accompany me to this meeting. I can't leave Jake with you anymore. I'm going to adopt him. My sudden declaration seemed to surprise them, but they didn't seem to care much. Fine by me. Yeah, do whatever you want. They agreed without much resistance. Okay. Legally, adopting a child under 15 requires parental consent. Will you formally agree to this? With Michael as a witness, David and Tracy formally consented. We're relieved to be rid of him. Now we can focus on making Sophie a star. They nodded, grinning at each other. How can you say that? Children aren't your possessions, and you're just trying to mold Sophie to your wishes. Shut up. David spat angrily. I've recorded all your statements and will report everything to Children's Services. Whatever. Go ahead. Tracy maintained her defiant attitude. So, I decided to mention their beloved granddaughter. We need to hear Sophie's feelings too. I don't trust you with her either, and I want to take her as well. What? Are you out of your mind? Don't go overboard. Tracy's confidence evaporated, and she glared at me with a furious expression. We adore Sophie. She wouldn't want to be separated from us, right? Yeah, she definitely wouldn't go to your place. They were confident Sophie would choose them. Oh, really? Sophie told me she didn't want to go to dance or singing lessons. That can't be true. Have you been forcing her into things she doesn't like? Do you really think she'll keep going along with your plans? My firm stance seemed to hit a nerve, and they began to look worried. Finally, I decided to reveal some big news. By the way, Jake's drawing, which you mocked, won the grand prize in a competition. He even received $3,000 in prize money. Both of them widened their eyes in shock. You're lying. He can't have that kind of talent. Actually, a young nurse colleague who loved Jake's drawings suggested entering them in an art contest. He won the grand prize, proving his talent was genuine. The drawing they had scoffed at was recognized by many. Oh, and my colleague posted Jake's other drawings online, and many people want to buy them. Even now, when I recalled their stunned faces, it made me smile. They looked utterly flabbergasted. But their audacity didn't stop there. Actually, Jake is still our beloved child. Yeah, families should stay together. Realizing the truth of Jake's talent, they suddenly changed their tune, claiming they should raise him. The paperwork is already done. What are you talking about? Michael calmly reminded them, causing them to stomp in frustration. This is your fault for doting on Sophie. What? You're the one who wanted to leave Jake behind for the trip. They began blaming each other, arguing without shame. Enough. Jake is a precious child, and from now on, I won't support you two anymore. Please, don't say that. We'll change, please keep helping us. Susan, I'm begging you too. Shamelessly, they changed their attitude again and clung to me. Just then, the doorbell rang, and we heard a voice saying, "We are the police." Oh dear, it seems your ride is here. What? Why? What did I do? Of course, you left your child alone for 3 days while you enjoyed a trip. David, I'm disowning you today. Good luck. Wait. No. I brushed off his hand, handed them over to the police, and left with Michael. After that, I was able to formally adopt Jake, and Sophie said, I want to be with my brother and grandma. So the three of us started living together. I demanded $30,000 from David and Tracy for emotional distress and the misused funds. Though they were soon released from the police, they were fired because of this incident and eventually divorced after constant arguments. They're probably living lonely lives, but my grandchildren and I have no intention of seeing them again. Jake is thriving, joyfully drawing, and Sophie is happier and more playful. Watching them grow up became the purpose in my life, so I will continue to work hard.